All right, Michelle, so this is going to be your little kind of pitching how-to video. I know we're going to have the actual lesson in San Diego when I get back, but I know you wanted some information on it currently. So what you should expect from this video is you're going to get your basic traditional pitch shot, what it looks like, how the setup is, and all that good stuff. And then we're also going to show you how to hit kind of more, not quite a flop shot, but more so of a higher trajectory pitch shot so you can get a little bit more stopping power on those tuck pins that you were complaining that you're struggling with. So the first part, let's go over setup. So I like to start with stance width. Notice is my stance width is just below the shoulders. I like that for a pitch shot. Some people like to get narrower, that's completely fine, but when I tend to see players get too narrow, they really struggle to use their body efficiently and they start getting a little slidey. So I like to see a little bit wider than heels touching. Now, second part from there, we're gonna talk about basically tilts at setup. Now with pitching, I like to see the sternum ever so subtly in front of the, ever so subtly in front of the pelvis. Basically what that promotes is more so of a downward angle attack, which is what we want with pitch shots. So let me set up real quick and I'll show you kind of exactly what it's gonna look like. So again, sternum slightly forward. I got relatively a narrow stance just below the shoulder length. I like to see with pitch shots, hands straight up and down, so that means I don't have any of this motion or I don't have any of this motion. I like to see the hands and the club pretty much right in line with each other. Now, once we get our good setup, ball position should be right around middle to slightly front of stance. I want to get it more than about this far forward of center, which is right around an inch, because most players are going to really struggle with low point from there. So I like to keep it pretty much around center, even if I'm going to hit a high shot. All right, so now let's get into the basic mechanics and motion of what the wrists and the body are going to do, okay? So the first part to understand, which I think we went over the first lesson, which is really crucial, is getting the elbows rolled down, right? I like to always say this arm right here is kind of like a door hinge. We want to open the door hinge, or open the door, excuse me, on the backswing, right? So that's just externally rotating this elbow. So what I like to do is just some one-handed swings just to kind of get used to that. And I really get that feel of my elbow opening up. Now while I'm doing this, I currently have a mirror behind me. I think that would be very crucial for you to do that. And just watch yourself open up that elbow on the way back. Now what you should be looking for is from this down the line view, as I'm opening up my elbow, I'm also not getting the club head doing this, right? So when you're doing this, you're trying to make sure that the club is staying relatively in line with your hands. It can be slightly behind is preferred. Slightly outside is okay, but I'd rather see it over here. And that's pretty much the arms rolls throughout the swing. So again, opening the door hinge, closing the door hinge, right? Opening, closing, and that's pretty much the arms roll. Now the body's roll is pretty simple. It's just like the kick-up move we talked about in the full swing, where you're gonna see this little motion, that wakeboarding motion that we kind of talked about. That's pretty much what you're gonna see. So with one hand, this is gonna be the motion. It's gonna look something like this. So you can see that I had a little bit of a kick here. We saw that the elbow kind of opened and closed. And together, let's put it up and it's gonna look something like this. All right, Michelle, now for the high shot, we're gonna use a pretty similar setup. I don't really mess around with ball position, but the one thing I do mess around with that setup is instead of having the hands and the club head in line like this, I actually like to put the handle slightly back. Now what that does is it opens up the club face, right? Adds loft. Now some people, contrary to popular belief, think that doing this adds loft to the club, but it actually doesn't. All you're doing is twisting the club shaft on this way and pointing the face to the right. So if you really want to add loft at setup, what we're going to do is we're actually going to just get this handle slightly back. So it's going to look something like this. Normal setup, ball position pretty much middle, sternum slightly forward. And then all we're going to do is just go like this. Before we put our grip on, we're going to put the handle slightly back, and then we're going to put our normal grip on, and that is going to be our setup for the higher shot. Now, differences in release patterns are very, very subtle. We're still feeling like we're opening and closing the door hinge. But what I like to imagine is this sweet spot right here. As I start coming through the golf ball, I almost like to see this sweet spot point back at me which basically just means I'm keeping the loft open through the shot, which just makes the ball go a little bit higher, right? Some players think of the right hand sliding under while you're doing it. I just like to focus in on the loft right there. So let me kind of show you an example. We're going to set up, handle slightly backwards, sternum forward. We're going to feel like we keep the sweet spot pointing at our face. And it's going to look something like this. All right, and that's our high shot. Best of luck. I'll see you soon in San Diego. And yeah.